Welcome to Underground Wealth Secrets, hosted by Julie Houston on behalf of Bob and Ed Diamond. This is your friendly guide on leveling up your business, achieving financial freedom, and changing people's lives. This is for serious players who want to surpass their current stage and move the needle further. Tune in to get practical advice and eye-opening stories of industry leaders across the nation, teaching you how to scale your business with a strong financial mindset and true to your core values. Let's get this discussion started with your one and only host, Julie Houston.
Hey everybody, it's Julie Houston with Underground Wealth Secrets on behalf of Bob and Ed Diamond, and I am super excited today to be here with Jeremy Knauff, who owns Spartan Media. And man, we met a few years back, huh, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's been a while now.
We've known each other for a few years. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and yourself and kind of where you're at today?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor to join you guys. As far as my backstory and how I got where I am, the ultra condensed version is after I got out of the Marine Corps, I started my first company. It was a web design agency, and that failed miserably. I was probably, well, I used to say that I started that a little bit too early. That was back in 1999. The reality is it could have worked. I just didn't know enough at the time to make it work. From there, I bounced around at various jobs for a while before eventually starting my next agency, ran that successfully for many years. And then out of the blue, I was hit with a health crisis that nearly killed me. And I spent about 2 years on my deathbed. We burned through every penny we had just trying to stay alive. And once we had run out of everything, I was still sick, but had to go back and start working and try and figure out how to, support my family. And so what I ended up doing was I leveraged public relations to put myself back on the map very quickly. And in doing that, I got my next agency off the ground faster than I had ever done anything before. It blew up incredibly big, incredibly quickly. And I eventually realized, well, hey, this is something that everyone needs, right? Everyone needs to be featured in the media so they could be recognized as an authority in their industry, which of course then leads to all kinds of other cool things. Like you can charge more money, more opportunities come to you. All these great things happen. So after I made that realization, I pivoted to focusing entirely on PR, and that's where we are today.
I love it. How did you even fall into PR and get like the relationships that you now have today? That's got to be like a huge part of the success.
It absolutely is. And there was a lot of hustle, a lot of trial and error, because PR really is very much a relationship-based industry. So what I did was I started off by I've always been very good at writing. So I would start off by, I would write an article, and then that article would be great. Everyone would read it. Everyone would share it. And so I knew that it resonated with people. So what I would do from there is I would then take that article, pitch that same concept to other outlets. And in this case, it was typically smaller industry publications. And then, they loved it, and it would of course get traction there. More people started seeing my name. I would then turn around and take that same concept and pitch it to the podcasts. So now I come on and I talk about that same topic. So I've basically taken one piece of content and exponentially multiplied it out across the entire swath of the industry and turned it into all of these opportunities. And then basically, wash, rinse, repeat. You keep going through that process and you get more exposure, you get more visibility, and you get more authority. And then opportunities start coming to you from there. The other side of it, of course, is, like I said, I started off with my blog and then leveraged that to work my way up to the trade pubs. And then from there, I started going out to the various local media outlets and what I would call tier one outlets like Entrepreneur, Forbes, Inc., Fast Company, things like that. And, you just kind of work your way up the chain and then keep that momentum going. And that's basically how it works in a nutshell. The key is building and nurturing those relationships, right? It's not this like one hit thing where you do something and then move on to the next thing. You have to keep engaging with those journalists, engaging with those editors, those producers, and make yourself valuable to them. Because look, they're out here just like every other person. They're busy, they're overworked, they're stressed. And if you can get out there and be of value to them, be an asset to them, and make their life easier, then you're going to get a lot out of that relationship, just like they're getting a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. I'm in the relationship business too. Not the same niche as you and what you do, but it's all about the relationships and nurturing them. I couldn't agree with you more. What an incredible way to start. You had that one piece that just, you were able to rinse and repeat and build such success from too. I mean, you don't see that very often. I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and I think that's a really important part of business in general, is like everyone thinks, oh, well, I have to go try this thing and then try that thing and then try that thing. Oops, beating my microphone up here. You've got, when you find a process like that that works, leverage the hell out of it. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel over and over and over.
Yes. So what are some of the challenges or adversities that you see even today working with your current clients that you're facing, and how are you overcoming them?
Well, all right. So that's an interesting topic, because when it comes to overcoming adversity, that's something that I've always been fairly tough, right? I mean, I served in the Marine Corps. I had a lot of things in my early days. Mm-hmm. But when I went through this health crisis, that's where I really learned a lot about adversity. And that's been incredibly valuable for me on the business front as well. So this is a story that I don't share a lot, but I did share this on our friend Jay Connor's podcast a while back. The short version is, when this whole health issue came up, and I was on my deathbed, I was in tremendous pain, like physical pain that was so intense that morphine didn't even take the edge off of it. So, being a Marine, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that there's firearms all over my house. And
I'm a veteran too.
Yes, I know. You're a squid, but we won't hold that against you. You're our Uber, actually.
We are. I believe that your paycheck also says Department of the Navy, but we'll talk about that on another show.
It is. It's the men's department, but that's okay.
I love you.
Likewise. So that actually reminds me of some of the things that used to happen on deployments. Like in between the services, like we would give each other so much shit. But I'll tell you what, let someone else step to one of us and everyone is on them. Mm-hmm. It's just like this camaraderie. But all right. So back to the story. So I had weapons all over the house, and I would be walking around and in this just unfathomable level of pain. And I certainly didn't want to die, but I wanted the pain to end. And so many times I would walk around and I would, hey, here's this gun. I don't want to go, but if I did, that's an easy way to do it. It's a quick way to go. And I started having those thoughts more frequently than I was comfortable with. And I ended up unloading, disassembling everything, tossing it into a great big duffel bag, called a friend of mine, and I was like, look, we don't have to be worried, but there may come a time in the very near future when I call you and ask you to come store this at your house. And it was not too long after that one of the toughest Marines I ever served with took his life. And
so sorry.
For me, thank you. For me, that was a turning point, because I knew what I was capable of. I know the challenges that I had been through, and here I am having these thoughts. He was one of the toughest guys I knew, and here he is taking that action. And we've got an epidemic of veteran suicide, right? 22 a day is the stat that we're at right now. And so I realized that, like, if we can have these thoughts, like literally anyone can. And you were in quite a while ago, back when I was like around the same kind of time.
I served during 9/11, Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Okay. All right. So back then, it's gotten better since then. But back then, the mindset was always, well, anyone who does that is weak and a coward and blah, blah, blah. And the reality is it's very different. It's not that they're weak. It's not that they're cowards. It's that they just want an end to the pain or whatever else it is in their situation. So, what I ended up doing was I started counseling a lot of other veterans. And I know because they've told me that I've actually pulled a number of them. I have a certain number that I know of, and then an undetermined number that I've had this impact on, who would have taken their lives had we not connected and we pulled them back, right? So what I found in this is the biggest aspect of overcoming adversity really is having a mission that's bigger than yourself, right? Now, this is something in the military that we did regularly, right? Like, it's the mission, whatever the mission is, right? For you guys, it's the stuff y'all are doing on the ships. For us, it's, the on the ground stuff. If I don't do what I need to do as in my role as a Marine, well, then my brothers die. So it's that same concept, but applied to business, right? So if you have a mission to, I don't know, in the groups that we're in, there's a ton of real estate investors, right? So a lot of these people have a mission to turn X number of people into millionaires, right? So that's a powerful mission because it's not about you. It's not about your income. It's about creating this different life for people who may not have that opportunity if you didn't come along, right? So finding that mission that's bigger than you, because that's what's going to pull you through when you're uncertain, you're scared, and everything is stacked up against you. That's what's going to push you through or pull you through these challenges. The other thing is we have to control our perspective, right? So going back to the health crisis story, if I sat there and made that all about myself, it would have had no positive impact. But when I look at it and I see the silver lining in, had Todd not taken his life, I know there's a certain number of people who would not be alive today, because that was a turning point for me that caused me to start counseling all of these veterans. So,
life-changing.
Exactly. So when you look for that, you choose how you look at things. You have somebody who could look at a situation and all they see is the problems and the challenges and the chaos and the negativity. You could have someone else facing the exact same situation and they're looking at the opportunities. They see, well, hey, this is a chance for me to get better at this thing that I suck at. Or this is a chance for me to, get stronger, get more resilient, learn things. So when you look for the good, look for the positive in a situation, that can completely change your ability to overcome adversity. And then the other aspect of this is just kind of breaking it up into chunks, right? When we look at a giant problem, it can be overwhelming. But if you break it up into, hour-long chunks, that's manageable. I mean, hell, you can break it all the way down to the minutes. I mean, I don't know about you, but I know we certainly did that in boot camp. You would break down, from meal to meal to meal. All I have to do is make it to the next meal, right?
Yes.
And
I remember.
So it's the same concept there. We take whatever the problem that we're facing, the adversity that we're facing, and we start to break it down into smaller components, right? So let's say, let's say you just lost a giant client. Well, now you need to replace whatever dollar amount of revenue, right? Well, that can be broken up into sitting down and planning how to replace the revenue. Mapping out whatever you need for the marketing campaign, starting to make phone calls, reaching out to your friends and looking for connections. Like all of these little pieces individually are not overwhelming. So when you break it down like that, it's an absolute game changer.
Absolutely. So is this how you kind of incorporated it with your clients from your background and your history?
And what do you mean by that?
Like, as far as like when you're working with your clients that you work with, you kind of use the same model and process with your clients that you work with on a media level? I'm sure you have a various amount of clients, different characteristics and backgrounds.
Right. So from an adversity perspective, no, there's generally not really much of a correlation there. With the clients, what we do is we have a process, which is the same process that I used when I came back from my deathbed to, basically get back on top of the industry. We've basically taken that process, documented every single step of it. I'll have to show it to you sometime. It's actually really fascinating. It's this entire
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, but we've got the entire process documented, and what we do is anytime we find a way to improve it, we're now updating the process document. But that process leads to consistent and powerful results because it's not just winging it. It's not just, well, let's try this over here and that over there. We know what works. We follow that process. Everything from when we first, even as early as when we start talking to a client, because we will turn down clients. It has to be a fit, right? The client has to have the right mindset. They have to be in it for the right reasons. It's not just about the money. It's about them running a good business and creating a positive impact in the world. But they have to be, they have to be ethical. Case in point, there's somebody that you might know. I'm not going to say his name here, but I'll tell you who it is afterwards. But we had to fire him because of a lack of ethics. Short version was he wanted to issue a press release because he was accepted into the Forbes Council. Now, I don't know if you remember me talking about the Forbes Council a couple weeks ago.
I do.
Garbage. Okay.
I follow you. Your content's really, really valuable. I follow you myself.
I appreciate that. So he wanted to put out a press release about being accepted into the Forbes Council. Now, for your audience who may not know, the Forbes Council may sound, prestigious and exclusive.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you have a credit card and a pulse, you can get into it. Problem is, it's not real media. It's a paid program where you pay, I think it's $2,500 a year, and you're able to write articles for Forbes. What most people don't know about that is if you do that, you can never write for Forbes in the actual Forbes because it's actually run by a completely separate company. It's run by a separate company and they have a non-compete in place. So if you write for Forbes, you will never write, or if you write for the council, you can never write for actual Forbes. Right. So anyway, long story short, I tell him, look, we're not going to issue a press release about the Forbes Council because that's not newsworthy. Nobody cares. And honestly, if a journalist sees that, they're going to think you're an idiot. So he went behind, before we get to that, he says, well, listen, I just want to do it because then I can put in all those, as featured in logos. Well, you're not actually featured though. That's called syndication.
Yes.
So when you put out a press release, it just gets pushed out to these, various local news sites.
It's just syndicated content. Yep.
Right. And
it's not really coming from them.
Right. And most of the time, within 30 days or less, that content gets deleted anyway. So, I told him all of these things. Well, he went ahead and issued it on his own. And I didn't know that. And then he went ahead and also put the as featured in on all of his social media profiles. And so he and I and this reporter for a major financial publication are all on Zoom and she's interviewing him. She looks up his social media. And she's like, oh, well, I see that you're here and here and here. She's like, do you have these links? Like that could be handy kind of, base material for this article. And he's like, And I was like, oh my God, let's go ahead and put a pin in this for now. And let me find out what's going on with this. And let me circle back with you. So fortunately, that didn't damage my relationship with the journalist because it's somebody I've known for years and have a great relationship. And I told her what had happened, but not only did he not get covered, but he was also blacklisted from that outlet and about 6 others, including like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, because this journalist wrote for all of them. So now he's never going to be featured in any of those outlets. So that's an example of, there has to be a good fit. We have to align ethically, things like that. But that's where it all starts, is kind of looking at who they are, what they're trying to achieve, and, are they really
the real deal?
Right. Are they looking? Well, that's a whole nother story. Yeah. The whole real deal. You and I were just talking about a certain fake person who got a lot of interesting media coverage lately. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it needs to all align, because if we're going to put our reputation and relationships on the line, it has to be the right person. But that's where it all starts. And then from there, we go into a deep dive where we basically extract everything out of their brain so that we can figure out who they are, what they stand for, and figure out the best way to present that to the media. Because a lot of people think, oh, I don't have a story. Nobody's interested in what I have to say. This isn't exciting. I guarantee you, if I sit down for 15 minutes with damn near anybody, I can pull out a story that people are going to salivate over. So it's a matter of pulling that together, distilling it into a nice, concise, tight little message, and then going out and pitching that to the right journalists. And from there, then taking that content, that publicity, and leveraging it, teaching them how to leverage it in their marketing. So, I mean, that's basically what the process looks like, because it's not just the publicity, right? A lot of people have this mistaken idea that, oh, well, hey, I was featured in Forbes, or I was on Fox Business, or I was an entrepreneur, and everything's like the world's going to open up and, all roads lead to me now. No, that's not how it works. You then have to take that and leverage that in your marketing, right? In your social media, in your conversations, things like that. So that's basically what the process looks like. It's finding the right people, extracting that information, distilling the story, and then leveraging the publicity.
I love it. You have it dialed in.
Absolutely. That's the only way to do it, right? Like,
so you look at like their page results, their reviews, everything.
Oh yeah. Yep. We even take it to the point of controlling what the search results look like for their name. So every aspect of it. It's a holistic approach.
I love it.
Thank you.
You have an incredible background that I was really unaware of, to be honest. I'm very impressed, for sure. So today, currently, with the entrepreneurs that you're working with, any newer people that say we're interested in working with you as in having your services, what are 3 to 5 things you would tell them are a must have in order to even be considered? Or what would be your top suggestions if they were looking to do something like this to even be serious with you?
Well, whether it's with us, whether it's DIY, whether it's with someone else, there's a few things they absolutely need to do. First, you're going to have a strong brand. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be, Tony Robbins or Oprah or whoever, but you have to have, make sure all of your social media profiles are consistently branded, that it presents you as the authority on whatever it is you do, right? And this doesn't mean you have to be boring and sterile. We got a ghost here.
I love it.
Right?
It's a fun interview.
So it doesn't mean that it has to be boring and sterile and constantly, always posting purely about business. And in fact, you absolutely shouldn't be.
You should be authentic.
Absolutely. And, on the other side of that same coin, it doesn't mean you should go over the top and just try and create, crazy shit just to get, people to notice
just
you.
Real authentic days in your life, like out with the family or things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I covered part of this in an article that I wrote for Entrepreneur, where I basically took Michael Jordan, who is without question one of the strongest personal brands, if not the strongest personal brand in history. And that's probably the only sports reference you'll ever hear from me. But, I basically broke down how he built his brand, how it's impacted him, the NBA, and the team that he played for, which now I'm forgetting who the hell that even was. But, and then from there, I outlined.
I don't know either.
All right. So I don't feel so bad then. But from there, I then outlined some of the aspects of the brand. So aesthetics is what most people think of when they think of a brand. Maybe you have a logo, your headshot, your cover photos, things like that, the colors that you're using. That's all part of it, but that's actually a small part. And that kind of comes from the distillation of all the other things. the biggest thing that goes into your personal brand is what I call the 5 pillars. So this is like the 5 topics that you talk about that you're passionate about, right? So for me, I talk about public relations, obviously, to a lesser degree, marketing in general. I talk about veterans issues. I talk about entrepreneurship, and I talk about overcoming adversity. Those are my pillars. My content is always going to connect to one of those in some way, shape, or form. So when you identify what your 5 pillars are, now you've got a consistently aesthetically branded personal brand. So all your social media profiles are set up that way. You've got your personal brand website, all of that stuff. And then your content falls in line with your 5 pillars. Now you've got a strong brand that if you go and pitch the media and they happen to look you up on social, they're going to find something that reinforces what you're pitching to them, right? On your website, you should have a press page if you've ever been featured anywhere. If you've only been featured like 1 or 2 places, then it's probably not great to put it up there. You want to wait until you have a few. Yeah. But that's another thing that can have a huge impact. That's kind of your starting point. So does that answer your question on that one?
That does answer my question.
All right. Outstanding.
That does answer my question. What are some of your key factors when you're working with a client? Like, what are some of your main focuses and priorities when you're reviewing a client that you're working with?
Do you mean from a strategic perspective, or from a perspective of like who they are and
who they are?
Okay. So when we're evaluating a client, we're looking at it from the perspective of, first of all, do they fit into kind of our general box, right? So we work with people who are in a field where their expertise is what sets them apart. So we don't do product companies, just due to the nature of the relationships. I've kind of hooked up some friends here and there with some PR opportunities. They had, products, but that's not what we generally do. Generally, it's, somebody like a lot of the real estate investors that you and I know, yes. Financial planners, business leader type of people, things like that. And
established people.
Yes. Well, established, yes, but they aren't necessarily recognized yet. That's why they're coming to us, but they are a legitimate expert.
Yes.
That light is going to drive me nuts.
It's like you're at a disco, huh?
Right? I'm going to break out some glow sticks over here in a little bit.
I know, right? I love this. So what are 3 takeaways you would like our audience to get from this interview today? What are 3 things you want them to take away from this?
Well, all right. So I would say I definitely want them to take away the things we talked about from the perspective of overcoming adversity, because that's something that's useful in general, but we've got hard times coming ahead of us here. Although certain people are telling us we're not technically in a recession, we're in the middle of redefining words left and right lately. We are in challenging economic times, and it's only going to get worse. The consumer sentiment, what's the word I'm looking for here? Consumer confidence is horrifically low right now. Credit is already tightening up. Our friend David Phelps has been talking about this one a lot. The credit markets are really tightening up, both in terms of how much they're lending and in terms of the criteria of for who is able to get credit, like higher credit scores, larger down payments, things like that. So people are going to be in for some really hard times, and they really need to understand how to get through that adversity. So some of those things we talked about earlier on are going to be really valuable in the coming years. Adapting to change is another one. So, we talked earlier about
especially now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge right now.
When you start seeing the economy collapsing and you start seeing consumers pulling back and, the workforce pulling back, right? Like we've got this great resignation where people are just like, well, maybe I'll work. Maybe I'll just sit at home and play Xbox and, watch Netflix.
What's happening?
The government's just going to pay me. It's these Biden bucks, right? So, we've got all of these rapid fire changes going on in the world that we have to be able to pivot and adapt to all of the things that are going on. And then from the how to get featured aspect, which we didn't dig too much into that yet. I'm not sure what our time is looking like so far. Looks like we're at 6:34. So we've still got plenty of time to dig into the how and the why of that if you want to go into that side.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Let's do it.
All right. So, we talked a little bit about, how I kind of got my start there. And let's start there. So the branding aspect is a really important part. And then you take your story, and what you have to do is, first of all, find the right media outlets, right? So a lot of people think that PR is a numbers game. It's not. And if you approach it as if it were a numbers game, that's the fastest way to burn all of the relationships you could possibly have built. I'm in kind of a unique situation where I am both a publicist and a journalist. I write for a number of outlets.
Oh, I did not know that.
No? Okay.
I did not.
See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah, you do.
So in addition to, I'll send out pitches and based on whether they land or not, I, of course, get some idea of how to refine that. But on the other hand, I also am on the receiving end of a ridiculous number of pitches. So I can learn a lot from that in terms of what's a really shitty tactic, what's a really good tactic. I really learn more about bad tactics than good from the pitches I receive. But one of the big mistakes I see people making is they'll grab this list, whether they buy it somewhere or they build it themselves, and they'll just spam the hell out of it. And then they'll go in and they'll put up this, Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign sequence where they've got these horrible automated messages that just keep following up. Hey, are you still alive? Blah, blah, blah. And there's no personalization to it. There's no personal touch. It's not even a real connection. It's just, I'm going to hammer the hell out of you with messages until you either give me what I want or tell me to go the hell away. So that's something you don't want to do. In fact, I usually won't send a follow-up message. If I send a pitch and I don't get a response, 99 times out of 100, I'm just going to move on and either find a new angle and repitch them in a couple of weeks or move on to a different journalist. Because if they didn't respond, they either didn't see it or they don't care. Most of the time they don't care and they'll just delete them because journalists are getting an obscene number of emails every single day. Yeah. Fortunately, I've got my assistant who keeps my inbox relatively clean, but there's times when I'll get hundreds of pitches a day. So, and I'm not even a full-time journalist. I just kind of do it on the side to kind of, use that as content marketing for my business. So, I know several journalists that get thousands. So you don't want to contribute to that clutter. You want to have it be really precise. You want to get the right person, go research them, figure out who they are, what they care about, what they want to write about, look at what they have written about, and use that as kind of a starting point. Is this person a good fit to cover this story? And a lot of people, they have this idea that, oh, well, my story is great. Everybody needs to hear it. Everybody needs to write about it. And that's not really the case, right? We've all been kind of fed this lie. Our moms all told us, hey, we're special and everybody loves us and we're amazing. And nobody gives a shit about that.
Nobody does.
So it's really important to find the right journalists. And that's going to mean you're sending pitches to a lot fewer journalists. But because of that, you can craft a more effective message, right? And one of the big pieces of advice on this is we don't open up with silly small talk. Hey, how are you doing? Happy Friday, blah, blah, blah. It's all meaningless banter. It's not going to get their attention. and they know that it's bullshit. They know that you don't care how their Friday is going, right? So
I'm the last one in emails to add that stuff myself, because it's like boom, 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 boom. And a lot of people are like, you must get so much work done, because like nobody really cares like how my day is really going. Let's be real.
Exactly.
So I'm just like, hey, hope you're doing well. Wanted to get into this, and that's it. I'm so direct.
As it should be, right? And people respect that. And the cool thing about it, so have you ever read a book called Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff?
I have not.
Oh my God. So you have to read that book. It's amazing.
All right, I'm getting it.
One of the things that he talks about, and this isn't from a PR perspective, it's from a sales perspective, but the same concept applies. When you come in and you're sitting there trying to butter them up, and we all know that this flowery, buttery language is all bullshit, it puts you in a position lesser, right? It's like you're sucking up to them. Like they are superior to you, you're inferior. And when you're coming into a relationship with a power dynamic like that, it already puts you at a disadvantage. When you come in and you're direct and to the point, people take note of that, right? Like it doesn't have to just be a tactic. Like that's just, it's a good approach. When you come to them with this approach, they're like, oh, hey, like this is different. Even if they don't consciously realize it, they're like, oh, maybe this person really is important. Like, because everyone else is trying to butter me up and this person's just coming in here straight with the facts, right? So what I like to do is, exactly. So what I like to do is I like to come in with something that's going to grab them emotionally, right? So it could be a stat, what I like to call startling statistics. So, God, there's a particular stat, and I don't know what the number is right now off the top of my head, but we used this a lot when we were working with, so we were doing a lot of PR for Nicole Espinosa during the whole foreclosure and the rent moratorium, all that stuff that was going on a while back. And when we would come in with a new stat and pitch that to the journalists, like that was something that just grabbed their attention. If we said, hey, X number of people based on data from, who the hell was it now? Oh man, I'm drawing a blank. The government organization that tracks this stuff. I'm drawing a blank. It doesn't matter. So anyway,
some higher ups.
Right. Such and such reports that X percent of homeowners are 6 months behind on their mortgages, right? That's powerful because A, it's data, and B, it hooks them emotionally. We know that that's a staggering number, but on top of that, what is the next steps that come after that? Well, if all of these homeowners are 6 months behind, well, now we know intuitively, as anyone, any journalist who's writing about real estate knows that, well, then that means that a good portion of those people are going to get foreclosed on. Then that also means that the next logical step is these homes are now going to go into REOs. Well, now that can affect the property value in the entire city because all these REOs are on the market and the banks are going to try and sell them often at less than they could sell them for just to get them off the books. So there's this cascading effect. So by bringing this data in with an emotional hook, you're now painting a story without having to tell the whole story. And then from there, you go in and talk about whether it's yourself or you're pitching somebody else, you talk about how this person is uniquely qualified to comment on this topic and share value with their audience. Because it's always about the audience. It's never about you. You are the last. Thank you. You are the last person in the equation. So first comes the audience. Second comes the editors or the producers. Third is the journalist, and you come fourth. So when you approach it in that perspective, how can I bring the most value to your audience? What is something that they're going to care about? What is something that they're going to want to learn, which then means more eyeballs on the content? Well, what most people don't know is journalists are, they're kind of graded, so to speak, on the amount of traffic that their content produces, right? So if they're bringing in more eyeballs, that means the publication can charge more for advertising. So when you can bring in a killer story that people are going to love, they're going to engage with, they're going to share, they're going to talk about it to their friends. That means more eyeballs for the publication, which then means the journalist's job is secure for yet one more day. The editor's job is secure for yet one more day, and the publication gets to stay in the black. So everybody wins. And that's basically how that works. And then we always want to close that pitch with a strong call to action.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. You got this down pat.
That's why I do what I do.
I love it. So for our viewers, I understand we're going to give them some information where they can learn more about what you do at undergroundwealthsecrets.net. It is .net/Spartan. So it's undergroundwealthsecrets.net/Spartan. And you can get more information on everything that Jeremy and I discussed today on our interview.
Awesome.
Jeremy, thank you.
My
it's
pleasure.
been such an honor having you. Any final words that you would like to share?
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to do. So I know you've got that link there. Whether it's over there or over here, like we'll figure out the logistics on that afterwards. But what I'm going to end up giving away to your audience is something called the Authority Checklist. And basically, this is going to be an entire checklist of all the things that somebody has to have in place in order to start working their way up to becoming an authority in their industry. So everything from, how they're branding their social media profiles to how they are, controlling the search results, all of these things. So basically it's a framework that follows the same approach that we take in my agency, for those of your audience who want to kind of take a DIY approach.
Thank you for that. We'll make sure we add that as well. So we'll add that to the show notes for sure. Awesome. Thank you. So we're getting a free gift. Again, thank you for your time today, Jeremy. It was such an honor for having you on our show. Again, for more information, go to undergroundwealthsecrets.net/Spartan, and we'll also add the information on the free giveaway on the Authority Checklist. Until next time, thanks again, Jeremy.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Underground Wealth Secrets. May these nuggets of wisdom lead you to finally discovering your true potential. Become one of the most reliable businesses out there that's dedicated both to filling up your bank accounts and leaving a positive impact on your community. Get more informative and engaging conversations like this one at undergroundwealthsecrets.net. Don't forget to leave a positive rating and share with your friends. That's all for now. Until next time.